It was a big surprise when Nick Fury appeared in the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Not just because he has yet to meet Spider-Man in the MCU, also because Samuel L. Jackson is in everything this year. Captain Marvel, Glass, Avengers Endgame, Shaft, and now Far From Home? If there is such a thing as a multiverse, it would explain Sam Jackson's career. Maybe there are like 12 of him running around Hollywood assembling super teams and saying curse words. In any case, Fury is just one of the reasons why we're super excited about Spider-Man Far From Home. Not only is this the first MCU movie after Avengers Endgame, but it also introduces new concepts into the MCU.
Going to step up or not?
Evidently, the film will introduce to the MCU the concept of a true multiverse. While properties like Doctor Strange and Ant-Man have played with the idea of alternate dimensions, this is something new.
I'm going to allow that.
We could see completely different takes on the Marvel Universe as a whole. This could introduce a plethora of new Marvel characters that have just conveniently been bought by Disney into the universe. That is, if this isn't all just an elaborate hoax. So, let's dive right in. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse successfully introduced everyone to the superhero multiverse last year. Now, Spider-Man Far From Home seems to be toying with the idea as well. This means that there's a slim chance that we'll see Tom Holland's Spider-Man hanging out with other Spider-Men. If that does end up happening, there's only one candidate that fans really want to see: Tobey Maguire. In 2002, Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire made superhero history with their legendary film, Spider-Man. It first introduced casual film audiences to every comic fan's favorite webhead. Things only got better with the release of the sequel, Spider-Man 2. Spidey's battle with arch-nemesis Doc Ock is still considered one of the best superhero movies of all time by many. That's where things went wrong, though. The end of the trilogy, Spider-Man 3, was a complete disaster. It haphazardly tried to adapt the Venom saga, and somehow we ended up with an awkward emo dance number. It's one of the absolute worst comic movies ever made. This is a real shame, because it's likely the last time we will ever see Maguire's Spider-Man. That is, unless he appears in a surprise cameo in Far From Home. A team-up between Maguire's Spider-Man and Holland's Spider-Man would be the ultimate Spidey moment. It would basically be like a Spider-Man Avengers. While that Spider-Man team-up would be awesome, there's one Spider-Man we don't really need to see again. Sorry, Andrew Garfield, it's probably best if your Spidey days are done. This summer, we saw the premiere of the last of Fox's X-Men movies in the form of Dark Phoenix. The film was universally despised for its weak narrative and even weaker action sequences. Never have fans been so happy that Disney bought the X-Men's massive studio. Though this leaves us all with a huge mystery: how can the MCU introduce the superhero team in their already established universe? The X-Men aren't a simple team to introduce. They aren't quite like heroes such as Captain Marvel and Ant-Man. You can't just introduce them as though they are just another super team. They are part of an entire race of people called mutants who are often oppressed by the rest of mankind. Thus far in the MCU, we've seen super soldiers as Guardians, aliens, wizards, and Inhumans. There's been no trace of mutants, though. It would be really awkward for the universe to introduce them now as if they've always been around and we've just never seen them. It wouldn't make sense if the mutant phenomenon just randomly started either. Characters like Professor X, Magneto, and Wolverine have been living with their powers for decades. The obvious way to introduce the mutants is to have them exist in one of the alternate universes. They could even be refugees from an oppressive alternate universe government. It could be like Days of Future Past, where Sentinels have all but destroyed the mutant race. No matter what they do, it will be really exciting to see the X-Men get to hang out with the Avengers. Well, what's left of the Avengers, that is. We may never see Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark or Chris Evans' Cap anymore, but we could see them again. Tom Cruise famously almost got cast as Tony Stark. It would be interesting to see his version of the character as a peek of what might have been. John Krasinski was almost cast as Captain America as well. If his performance in Jack Ryan is any indication, he would have killed it as Steve Rogers. It'd be really cool to see Krasinski take up the shield, if just for a cameo. Tom Hiddleston came very close to playing Thor, believe it or not. It would be very Marvel to have him give a very wink at the camera cameo as the God of Thunder instead of Loki. Another interesting avenue the alternate characters could could go through is having them be evil versions of our heroes. They could do something similar to the Mirror Universe in Star Trek or the comic arc Secret Empire. That featured a Captain America who was a Hydra agent. Everyone's trying to figure out what kind of villain could possibly follow Thanos. The best villainous force would be an evil version of the old Avengers versus the new Avengers. There's one theory about the multiverse that's the most prevalent. Nick Fury presents the idea of the multiverse to Peter Parker. He does so by introducing Pete to Quentin Beck. Apparently, he's a superhero named Mysterio in his universe. That's what the trailers would leave you to believe, at least. Comic fans are not convinced. If you've read any Spider-Man comics, played the games, or watched the cartoons, you know a lot more about Mysterio. He's a master of visual effects who often uses tricks and holograms as weapons. He's basically like Spider-Man's version of the Riddler. Trade the riddles and shtick for lots of cool tech and a fishbowl helmet, and you've got Mysterio. That leads many fans to believe that the character is just flat out lying about the whole multiverse thing. It would be kind of crazy to think that he would be able to fool Nick Fury. Though some don't even think that he's really Nick Fury. He could be one of Beck's illusions, or even a different villain. Some think that he's actually the Chameleon, a shape-shifting master manipulator. It's a really solid bet that those elementals in the trailers aren't real either. Beck is known for making that kind of stuff up. There's still a possibility that Mysterio is an Iron Man meets Thor superhero, but it seems really unlikely. In Avengers Endgame, we see lots of cool time travel antics. The Ancient One tells Banner that when someone travels to the past, they could possibly create a divergent timeline. Luckily, the Avengers managed to correct most of these timelines when Steve Rogers returns the Infinity Stones. There's one timeline he may not have corrected, though. When the team goes back to the very first Avengers movie, they fail to retrieve the Tesseract. The Time Stone falls out of Tony's case and is taken by Loki. He then uses it to create a portal and escape. This is the last we see of him in the movie, so we don't know what happens next. It's been confirmed that Hiddleston will be returning for his own TV show on Disney+. This seemed really strange before Endgame. We saw Loki get taken out by Thanos in Infinity War, so how could he have his own show? Well, many fans think that it's the exact kind of divergent timeline the Ancient One was referring to. There's a very strong possibility that the TV show might end up being Loki's own personal MCU. We could actually see him take over Asgard, or maybe even the universe itself. Without any of that pesky continuity to get in the way, the sky's the limit for everyone's favorite god of mischief. Thanos was the big tease at the end of the Avengers. From that moment on, fans waited in tense anticipation to see if he would prove worthy of all that buildup. When he finally took the spotlight in Avengers Infinity War, he did not disappoint. The character went on to become one of the most iconic film bad guys of all time. It's sort of bittersweet to see him defeated in Endgame. Yes, he deserves to be destroyed by Tony Stark. That doesn't mean it wasn't fun to see him act as the ultimate Marvel adversary. His loss leaves a big hole in the MCU. For many years, the looming threat of Thanos was what kept the extended franchise moving forward. Almost every film featured an Infinity Stone or introduced a concept that would be necessary to defeat the Titan. Now that he's gone, what or who will be the through line? One of the biggest threats the Marvel Comics universe has ever faced is the monstrous Annihilus. He lives in an alternate universe called the Negative Zone. There, he rules over an incredible army of drones. Annihilus is a giant green monster who definitely rivals Thanos in sheer power. In the comics, Annihilus is the main focus of one of the greatest Marvel events ever. The Annihilation Wave was a huge crossover that featured Annihilus invading the Marvel Universe with his full army. It featured many cosmic characters such as Thanos and what would become the Guardians of the Galaxy. The comic is commonly thought of as one of the most cinematic events of all time. It's easy to see that story becoming a grand movie experience to rival Infinity War and Endgame. Now that Marvel is introducing an alternate universe, the Negative Zone could easily be one of them. Perhaps Annihilus will be the smiling cameo in Far From Home's end credit scene. There's another Marvel villain who's often rumored to be a big contender for Thanos' position as the MCU villain supreme. This one is one of the Avengers' biggest threats, though he would be hard to translate to the big screen. Kang the Conqueror has a unique shtick as far as villains go. He's a military leader from the future who wants to take over the past. He's basically a reverse Khan from Star Trek. Instead of him being a Genghis Khan-style warrior from the past, he's one from the future. Kang uses a variety of futuristic gadgets to take on the powerful superhero team. His character arc gets incredibly complicated, though. There's a version of him from the future named Immortus, and a younger version of him who becomes the superhero Iron Lad. The MCU seems to be teasing the young Avengers, so the Iron Lad twist could be perfect. The alternate universe concept could be an easier way to twist on Kang. Instead of leaning so heavily on his time travel antics, they could introduce him as the conqueror of his own universe. Perhaps the MCU Kang wants to make a multiversal empire. I'm pretty sure that's the first time anybody has ever said the term multiversal empire. Well, I'm a little proud, to be honest. The X-Men, Annihilus, and Kang aren't the only characters Disney bought from Fox. Perhaps the most heroic thing the MCU has ever done is rescuing the Fantastic Four from the clutches of 20th Century Fox. The first Fantastic Four franchise was a mixed bag. Michael Chiklis made for a great Ben Grimm, and Chris Evans was amazing as Johnny Storm. It's hard to even imagine a time before he was Steve Rogers now. Very little else was great about the franchise, though. Ioan Gruffudd and Jessica Alba both gave their roles what they could. Their versions of Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Girl were both mostly played for comic relief. Both characters deserved better than forced strip teases and bathroom humor. Things got worse with the Josh Trank version of the team. Literally nothing about that movie was remotely good. It is considered one of the worst superhero adaptations of all time. That means that it won't be too hard for the MCU to top what's come before with a new Fantastic Four. That team is famous for traveling to different dimensions. Perhaps they are famous superheroes in their own world. They might also get to their MCU start by trying to figure out how to master multiversal travel. I bet you anything that regardless of what happens, they turn Avengers Tower into the Baxter Building. We lost a lot in Avengers Endgame. Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and Natasha Romanoff are gone forever. Well, at least until Black Widow's prequel film. We also lost the MCU's biggest villain, Thanos. It was a big win for our heroes, but a sad day for those that love a good villain. That being said, the concept of a multiverse opens a door for Thanos to make a return. It's very possible that an alternate version of Thanos could confront our heroes yet again. Perhaps this version of the character will be a hero, unlike his MCU counterpart, though some fans would argue that Thanos was the hero all along. Perhaps an alternate Thanos comes to our heroes to warn them about Kang, Annihilus, or the evil Avengers. It would be iconic to see the Mad Titan fight alongside his archenemies instead of against them. There's one more huge possibility for a cinematic experience that would rival Endgame. Put this one in the almost definitely not gonna happen category. That being said, it's still a great idea. The multiverse concept could technically open the door for the Marvel heroes to interact with the DC heroes. How much would you love to see characters like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman meet up with the Avengers? Perhaps they will adapt stories like Secret Wars or DC vs. Marvel. In both, heroes are told to fight in order to appease a more powerful force. That might be the only way to top the battle sequence in Endgame. Thor fighting Superman alone would be worth the price of a movie ticket. This would only be possible if Disney bought Warner Brothers. At this point, that almost seems inevitable. Hollywood will just be called Disneywood. So there are the best MCU multiverse theories. Do you have any better theories? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more from The Binger.